Rouse's Markets is voted best grocery store in New Orleans, best grocery store in Baton Rouge, Mississippi, Gulf Coast, Thibodeau, Houma, Hammond, Lake Charles, Mobile, year after year. Thank you for choosing us best grocery store on the Gulf Coast. Number one. Thank you.
Thank you.
The number one grocery store
In Mississippi, Alabama,
Louisiana. 1 million customers a week can't be wrong. Welcome to Rouse's.
All right, we have an interesting show for you today on Good Vibes. Joining us as always, Debbie Costanova. She is right there.
Hello.
What a show today.
Yeah.
Wow. Understanding dreams.
Yeah.
You know, many people tell, but we just heard somebody on the phone say they had dreams last night. Mm-hmm. And they always try to understand them.
Yes.
I'm the type that just dream. I don't care if I understand them or not.
Yeah.
I don't have nightmares. I have good dreams.
And the reality is that you don't need to actually consciously understand them because it's a natural phenomenon that as long as you're actually getting the proper amount of sleep that allows for dreams, it's just a natural process that's going to benefit you regardless. But it is helpful to know what's happening in these different phases of sleep, the kinds of dreams that we have, what they're intended to do for us. And if you're not getting the specific kind of sleep that you need in order to support those dreams, to support yourself, because it's really critical is what we're learning, okay? And look, the research on dreams it's been about 60 years, right? Starting with Freud. And Freud had theories that you were living out your desires in your dreams and that these were potentially from the divine, right? Now, we've come a long way. It was very difficult and it is very difficult to study dreams because it's so subjective, right? We tend to remember very little, first of all, of what we did dream. And then when we do remember it, it's like that's the intensified part that we're talking about. It's related to our waking state. How do you measure something like that? And how do you scientifically study it? There are some consensuses that we'll talk about today that scientists have come to. Much of what Freud believed has kind of been debunked, or scientists are moving away from believing that. But really, really important to understand that your dreams do hold a lot to your actual perception of reality. In fact, there is one theory called proto-consciousness theory that is that every single time you fall asleep, you're actually reshaping your reality here, right? Because you can imagine our reality consists of our paradigm. It's the lens through which we're looking at the world. None of us are seeing the reality exactly the same, right? If we take just this microphone and we zoom down into it real close, the stuff of that reality is so much, it would blow our minds, right? So we have to be kind of filtering life through our own lens, and our dreams help us to sort of prune out what's not needed, to solidify what is, to make better connections, to unload emotional stuff, okay? So there are a number of things. First of all, as a reminder, because we've talked about this before, there are three phases of sleep. There's the light, slow wave sleep, okay, when you first, earlier part of the night, right? There's deep sleep where your memories are sort of consolidated from the day. And then there's REM sleep, rapid eye movement, where you are actually making different connections maybe connections that were not so obvious to you during the day with what happened so that you can actually emotionally process, okay? You can dream in any phase of that. But REM sleep is where the dreams are most intense. It's where you have the most bizarre dreams. Sometimes you're paralyzed. So we're going to talk about what's really important there. There are a few things though. Number one, scientists believe that part of why we dream this is called the threat simulation theory, is that if you perceive threats or you're afraid of something in real life, that your simulation will sort of bring forth things that are familiar to you, and it's always what's familiar to you, right, into your dream state and have you actually live out perceived threats or fears, okay? Number two is social. So some of the social wirings that we have, our relationships to other people, we'll replay that, bring that into whether it is romantic relationships, friendships, relationships with maybe our boss or our employees or our coworkers. Number three is memory and learning, super important. I'm going to talk about that in the very beginning of the sleep state. You deal with emotions. We've talked about this. It's kind of like your brain's therapy, if you will, okay? Your natural form of therapy, self-induced. And then, of course, there's lucid dreaming, which about 20% of people do on a regular basis. 55% report having lucid dreaming at some point in life. But about 20%, you said you were, right? Do you have lucid dreams?
I have so many dreams. It's unbelievable.
And so lucid would be like you actually are aware that you're sleeping. And in some cases, you can actually use your intentions to direct things. So you can maybe fly if you want to fly. You can zoom yourself to a different place if you want to. The people who have a very small percentage of people have lucid dreams on a nightly basis. And what they typically report is that it actually interferes with their ability to have that recuperative, really restful kind of
I
sleep.
have lucid, I guess you'd call lucid dreams about some of my deceased relatives giving messages to other relatives.
Oh, that's very interesting. Okay, that's very
And my
interesting.
grandfather appeared to me one night and said that he missed my dad when Dad was living.
Okay.
So me and Dad were fishing that day, and Dad he was real quiet. I said, Dad, what's wrong? He said, I miss my dad. There's a connection.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
12 hours apart,
So there may be in some, and obviously this is very difficult, if not impossible, to actually research, but there may still be a connection to the divine in that dream state. There are people who have solved equations, have solved difficult problems in their sleep, have had connections with people who have crossed over. A lot of mystery is still associated with dreams. So this is something that Andrew Huberman, the neuroscientist, he actually recommends a dream journal. So the thing about it is that when we talked about to Joni, like some people don't remember their dreams, but if you just set an intention before you go to bed to remember, it actually helps. I think the day after we talked about Joni never remembering her dreams, she remembered her dreams, right?
I remember the dreams for about 20 seconds. If I don't write them down, they're gone.
Yes.
I wake up, I'm going, oh, and I hurry up and get my phone.
Yeah.
My grandfather appeared. Here's the date. Here's the time.
That's
blah, blah, blah.
it.
That's what he said.
For some reason, we're very emotionally connected to the dreams that we have. It's like we have a compulsion to share them with other people when they're really intense.
Right.
But right after REM sleep is usually where we remember them the most. And that's a really good time to just write it all down for yourself because you could have some revelations that come up during
Some
the day.
dreams I'd rather not talk about.
Agreed.
All right, we're going to take a short break. We're going to come back with part 2 of dreams. This is good stuff. Today's social media segment is brought to you by South Louisiana Bank. It's better when we bank together. Waits and Downer, attorneys at law. Terrebonne Ford, built Ford tough. All right, we're back talking about understanding dreams with Debbie Cox DeNova. And going to the break, I was thinking there are 2 dreams that I had was concerning. Helicopter flying through power lines. And I never hit the power lines, but it was just tense, near misses. Car, the brakes go out. I'm on a cliff road.
Yep.
And right before it goes off the cliff, the car stops.
I've had similar to that before.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you, in these dreams, is there an experience of fear or do you kind of feel like I've got this, it's under control?
No, it's some fear.
It's some fear. Okay.
Yeah.
So contrary to popular belief, because most people believe that when they have nightmares, when they have something that elicits a fear state, that they must be in REM sleep because that's the most active, bizarre time. But actually, when they study neurochemically, what they have found is that it's likely happening in that first phase of sleep, the slow wave sleep. Now, in the slow wave sleep, what they have found is that, and we've talked about the neuromodulator, and just for anyone who's like, what is a neuromodulator? This is basically, you can imagine like the playlist of the brain. So these are chemicals that actually help to fire up certain brain circuits and then tone down other certain brain circuits. So we have things like serotonin and dopamine, and we have acetylcholine, which we've talked about. Now, acetylcholine's job is to get you to focus in on one thing, okay? So it kind of narrows your focus down. In that first wave of sleep, so through the night, you're doing 90-minute, what they call ultradian cycles of sleep, okay? So every ultradian cycle is 90 minutes. The more cycles you go through in the night, the more of the ultradian cycle is deep REM sleep. Okay, so that's why people who sleep in the very beginning of the night, they don't sleep like maybe after 3, 4, they have a hard time sleeping up until the morning time. They typically are not getting enough REM sleep. We'll talk about what that means. But if you're in that early phase, in the slow state, it's like that slow wave, it's like wide, there's no acetylcholine, which means there's like a broad, there's not a single focus. It's kind of like a broad brain activity kind of thing. You do actually have serotonin and epinephrine production. So that's kind of odd because you're like, okay, epinephrine is the, stress hormone, like when you're scared, you're afraid, stress. So if you think about that early state of sleep, you're still able to move around because epinephrine allows you to move, right? Serotonin, though, has you kind of blissful, calm, and wanting to relax, okay? So if you see someone who's just fallen asleep, they're relaxed, but they're still able to like flip around, turn over, still move around, right? So because of that, it's believed that when you have a nightmare, because you actually still have epinephrine available to you and you're able to move, that it's typically in the slow wave state that you're actually having that nightmare. If not, it's usually, if you're in REM sleep, what's happening is that there's a crossover effect into wake cycle. The reason is that when by the time you get to REM cycle, rapid eye movement, right? And it's not just a back and forth like EMDR. We talk about EMDR, but it's erratic. Like a lot of if you roll the eyelid back, which we definitely don't recommend. What you'll see is like a darting. It's kind of freaky looking, right? A lot of brain activity. Now, what's interesting is serotonin is absent during this sleep state, so that bliss state is gone.
No relax.
Right? You relax, but there's no like that. Yeah, you're not like completely like blissed out.
Right.
And epinephrine, this is the only time that scientists know that epinephrine is not being produced is during REM sleep. So that means you're paralyzed, okay? So you're in this state of atonia, which they call it atonia. You're paralyzed. You have rapid eye movement, and what's happening a lot in this state of sleep is that you are actually processing mentally a lot of what is like emotionally processing. So what they found in some studies is that if you do not have enough REM sleep, what starts to happen is that you start catastrophizing things during the day. Like you actually make associations to things that are negative all over the place. It's like everything, you're making mountains out of molehills. You can't handle things emotionally, right? If you don't get enough slow wave sleep, that's the part in which you're actually developing motor skills. Like if you've been learning something in athletics, the first night part of the sleep is where you're actually implementing learning those motor skills, right? And you are actually memorizing things better. So if you're getting that first chunk of sleep and you've been studying for an exam or you're preparing for a game the next day and you don't get the next, don't worry, because you've gotten the kind of sleep that you need in order to actually perform well the next day. But if you're somebody who's cranky, irritable, you're having a hard time processing things emotionally, you may want to look into whether or not you're getting the deeper REM sleep. And a lot of that can be that even some of these sleep aids will produce serotonin in the system. Okay, like 5-HTP is a precursor to serotonin.
Or like melatonin.
Or melatonin, exactly. And what happens is it keeps you in that slow wave sleep longer. And we already talked about the longer you sleep, the more that you have those in your ultradian cycle, you have more REM sleep. So you may be interrupting the delicate natural structure of the dreaming, and it's not allowing for that more recuperative therapy.
I took melatonin one time in my life, and I did not like the dreams.
Oh, see?
So I quit taking it.
Yeah, exactly. And then some people experience like waking up, like a complete wake up. The other thing, the last thing I want to leave with is that research has shown, oddly enough, that it's more important to get consistent levels of sleep than to have erratic levels of sleep, even if you're getting more sleep in the erratical. So for those of you who are at home going, oh no, I've only gotten 6 hours, I'm only getting 6 hours. It's better for you to go to bed and wake up at the same time and get 6 hours than someone who's getting 8 hours and then 6 hours and then 10 hours and then 5 hours. The body really loves that.
And Joni says she takes a teaspoon of honey.
Yes, and that absolutely can work.
We'll try that tonight. See what Joni's talking about.
Exactly. And also don't go to sleep with a full bladder.
I'll have bees buzzing all around. All right, great show.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you again next week on Good Vibes. Go to sleep. Today's social media segment is brought to you by Alford and Associates for all of your insurance needs. CIS, Cardiovascular Institute of the South, the highest quality cardiovascular care available. Barker Honda, the Barker family tradition of quality.